Welcome to Oneself. My name is Stephen Maher, and with me today, and with me always, is Adam Bartleman. Adam, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me again, Stephen.
Yeah, man. So flashback to when I was 13 years old, and my older brother put in front of me a porn video for the first time in my life. And that was the kickstart of probably an unhealthy pattern of behavior in my life where periodically you watch a video of porn, you change the oil, as my freshman basketball coach would say. Which was crazy for a high school coach. He's like, "Don't do drugs, don't do it," but if you got to change your oil, like he's like, "I get it," which was crazy for a man to be telling 14-year-old kids. Um,
Oh
but
boy.
yeah, it's just, I mean, just to reiterate, like that was like normalized almost, like in my upbringing. And it's not a good thing, right? It's not a good thing to have just your lusts in control of your mind, and for porn to be something that you use frequently. Like everyone, you feel it, man. Like everyone feels that, the post nut clarity, right? That like people talk about, where it's like after
Mm,
you do the deed, you know you just feel kind of gross. And it's like you
mhm,
think about what you just did and it feels gross, and it's
mhm,
this primal thing that we're engaging in, right? It's kind of that animalistic ancient human thing that we tap into. And then once you do it and then you come back to your senses, you're like, what the hell just happened, right? Yeah, man, any opening thoughts on that, on just the porn thing, the lust, and I want to dive into how that feeds into romantic relationships too later on in this episode as well. But just let's start with that, the bit. And before I dive into you too, a lot of empathy towards anyone dealing with this, right? It's on
mhm.
social media, you know what I mean? Or like the soft porn, right? It's like it's everywhere, man. Like, there's people, half naked people, guys and girls, all over the internet, right? And so it's really hard to be in control of that. So I'm not saying this is easy to anybody, right? Like this is a really hard thing to have self-control over, and to avoid that stuff, whether in the algorithm or, in real life. Um yeah, so I'm just like, guys, like I get it, you know what I mean? It's really hard to avoid that, especially if you're online frequently. So I just want to preface that and like kind of lay the floor, and let's dive in.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely something that has been normalized and seen as okay, especially within any sort of group where it's just men, where there's a little less shame speaking about what goes on behind closed doors. It's prevalent. It's in my experience, it's everywhere, working in different industries that I've worked in and growing up, high school, playing sports, all that stuff. It's like, yeah, it's very normalized and yeah, it feeds into the whole problem that we're going to talk about later, which comes with the objectification of women, in our case, we're, straight men talking about this, and yeah, it's a big deal for sure.
Absolutely, man. And I think, how many men have you seen where their lives were destroyed by their lust, right? By going outside of their marriage, right?
Mhm.
Or teachers engaging with students, or at the worst level. Like that's obviously awful and illegal and weird and creepy, or you know what I mean? It's just like people like this don't underestimate how fast a decision can destroy your life, especially when it comes to this topic.
Mhm.
And we've seen it, right? I mean, we've seen it in the past, where you're in a group of guys and you see one of them actively cheating on their partner or their wife or their girlfriend, and you're supposed to stay silent because it's the bro code. But that's just a messed up way of dealing with that situation. Like that's not being honest, that's not living integrity. My stance now, maybe when I was younger, I was just like, not my problem, right? Like not my issue. But now I'm like, no, that is that is my problem, you know what I mean? And I don't want you in my life if that's how you walk through life. How can I trust you in anything if the person that you choose, your partner, that, you know, the most important decision you'll ever make, and you're lying to that person actively in the worst way, you know, by
Mhm.
engaging with others outside of that commitment you made to that person. It's messed up. It's messed up, and I don't think there's a place for it. And you know, yeah, yeah. What do you think about that?
Yeah, ultimately, we have to recognize that, yeah, our choices matter too. So whether we're what, like as you said, you know, in the past, and same for me, maybe kind of say, well, it's none of my business, but then I continue hanging out with this person. I continue being friends with this person who's engaging that behavior. And that's when I, you know, later on had to realize, well, if I am friends with people that are engaging in behavior, whatever kind of behavior doesn't align with me, and it's not from this like judgment place of this is right or this is wrong. It's just an intuitive feeling like this doesn't feel good for me, which I think is the best compass to use personally. But realizing that, yeah, it came down to me. Like I had to choose to place my energy into relationships that made sense for me, that I supported, you know, like that I wasn't sort of supporting supporting an immoral behavior, in my opinion. um Not supporting a behavior by, you know, lending my energy to that person, because you kind of validate we can end up validating people by continuing a relationship with them, right? Like a friendship, whatever it is, whatever kind of relationship. If we are still showing up and we're sort of unconsciously uh giving the okay for that behavior to continue. So yeah, it does come down to seeing that and seeing our part in it, in all ways, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, there's that famous line where it's like you are who you surround yourself with. And if
Mhm.
you're surrounding yourself with people who are engaging in just behavior that demonstrates that, man, you know, their word doesn't mean a thing. You know, they're
Yeah.
clearly not, you know, and you know, I've seen people where it's like, would you want to do business with someone like that? Like, would you want
Right.
to become business partners with someone who's cheating on their partner? Which means, what if they're hiding money from you? Like, if you go into business with that person, like if they're a
Yeah.
friend, and you know, people often do business with friends, and it's like, who's to say they're not cooking the books behind your back? You know,
Yeah.
that's very likely possible.
Yeah, and ultimately, I think it's important to realize that whenever someone is lying to others, it means that first and foremost they're lying to themselves. And if we are surrounding ourselves with people like that, then it's an opportunity to look at ourselves as well, because we have to be the change that we want to see in the world. And when we recognize that the people around us are really just mirrors for us, so if we're around people that are behaving in this way, it's really an opportunity for us to go inward and look at where we're lying to ourselves. Um, Sort of shifting the conversation a little bit back. Always, I think it always comes back to ourselves. So realizing that, yeah, when that behavior is going on, it's like it's an opportunity to look inward.
Yeah, man. And I think it's rooted in just this warped perception of what romance or love or um courtship in today's world. Like, it's just this warped view of like what that should be, or people just doing it with the social media apps, right? Where, you know, if you're online with any of those apps and just swiping, you're dehumanizing everybody in that process, right? Like, no
Mhm.
one's treating anyone like a human being in that,
Yeah,
right? You know.
It it's a very egotistical pursuit. It's a very surface level. So we'll just put it even more simply. It's a very surface level approach, right? It's very objectifying. And
Yeah.
that's kind of what if we're reducing ourselves to that, then that's what is, again, is being reflected in our environment. And when we're choosing partners based solely on surface level um, attributes, that's yeah, we're setting ourselves up for suffering later on.
Yeah. No, and just to reiterate,
Mhm.
it is who you choose as a partner, right? Who you choose, that's the person you're going to spend the most time with. That's the person your finances are tied to. That's the person who, you know, can make or break you, quite literally, right? And you can build a life together and do so with, good communication and, a healthy relationship. And sex is a part of that, right? Like ideally a healthy or ideally a healthy physical relationship that, comes with the other aspects of, communication, right? Like all those deeper levels of just building something meaningful. But on the flip side of that, if the relationship has a foundation that is not rooted in from a healthy place, 5-10 years down the line, when that implodes on itself, and 50% of marriages end in divorce, right? It's that cost, right? That you'll pay for that cost and pain and suffering. So I something I've seen too is that a lot of people settle, right? Because being alone's hard, man. Being alone in this world is hard. Like it's not even like I judge people. Like I understand. Like who doesn't feel alone, right? Who isn't insecure in this life? And just to have some company to walk through the world is nice. It feels good. It makes me, or not makes me, but like it makes no company. Makes me too. Like company is great. It's just someone to share the burden or the load of walking through life as a human being. And people people settle, right? And they get comfortable with a relationship just because it's hard to sit with their own thoughts when they're alone.
Yep.
And it was, for me too, right? Like that was me in the past, but like I've come to a place where I like alone time, right? Like I
Mhm.
like to sit with my thoughts. I like to be good company with myself, right? And even in my relationship, like I've established that, in my relationship where it's like, hey, like if I work a full day, or I'm engaging the world, like it's like I need a half hour just to myself,
Yep.
just to like decompress and just sit with my thoughts. Or do music or do something like just for me, right? Just to be
Yep.
with myself, just for me to operate in a healthy way to fill my cup, right? And yeah, man, what do you think of the phenomenon of people settling?
Yeah, I think I mean everything, we can always boil everything down to self-love.
Self
So
love.
if that's not strong enough, then we go, well, there's a if there's a lack of self-love, then that's going to come with a feeling of lack, right? You're lacking love, you're going to be searching, you're not finding it internally, you're not finding it within yourself, so then there's naturally going to be a rush to try and find it on the external. And when we're kind of trying to get anything that we can because we've been conditioned to believe that this world is sort of this this get what you can, survival of the fittest kind of reality, then it creates an environment in which that's likely to happen. People are gonna focus, hyper focus on the traits, attributes that the person that they're dating has, and overlook some of the negative ones, because that feeling of that sort of false feeling of getting some fulfillment, some completion, is really starting to override that deeper level of discernment. And just, yeah, it causes people to settle because they're looking for anything, they're grasping, and yeah, I mean that's a big conversation. Why do we
Yeah,
settle?
brother.
But
No,
yeah.
I know. I mean,
Yeah.
and my, I have settled in past relationships, and I can tell you
Mm.
for a fact I was
Me
not.
too.
Yeah, man, and I wasn't. I didn't love myself in that moment. I think
Exactly.
again, I think I've always liked myself. There wasn't like a self-hatred thing going on, or if there was, there, it wasn't like it didn't take over my mind, right? But when it came to like truly loving myself, right? Like 29, right? I think that only really happened within like the last year and a half,
Mm.
right? I mean, like, no, man, like I love myself, and even still, like I'm still trying to rewire my brain. But when
Yep.
I was in other relationships and you're looking for someone else to fill that void inside of you, and it's just that's just not how it works, man. Like you need to,
No.
you can't love somebody fully without truly loving yourself. And looking for that for someone else to fill that void in your heart, that's not how it works, right? You have to be your own individual that loves themselves and ideally shares that with another person who loves themselves, and you
Yeah.
guys come together as these, two parts that have their own life and have their own things going, and together you build something greater, right?
Yeah. And it can be I find that we can find a lot of understanding and compassion for ourselves and for others, and why we go through that journey of trying to seek seek to fill our cup from the external, when really it can only be done from within ourselves. I think we can find a lot of compassion when we just look at our society and our the way we've been sort of conditioned, the stories we've been told as we've grown up, right? And yeah, again, the consumer society in which we live, in which most of the ways in which we're taught to seek happiness and satisfaction, fulfillment, are all external things. Buy this new thing, eat some more food, get some, drink some alcohol. All these things, it's a consumer-driven society, and we're just bombarded with images and programming our entire lives, including those in story, right? Like in media, in movies, in books, in plays, every medium of entertainment in which a love story takes place is sort of like, well, I need someone else to complete me. I need to find the perfect match. And like all of these things can really be looked at as being myths that don't necessarily serve our greatest well-being, like our
Yep.
greatest sense of well-being. So we can see why it happens and how we get into these situations. And I think it's really important to look at that, so then we can kind of follow it backward and deprogram and see where it came from, and see that, like, we can feel that it doesn't work. We can feel that it doesn't feel good, because we've all ended up, like you said, in those relationships. That's been my experience as well, settling, and looking back now with hindsight being 2020, seeing very clearly that it was a case of not loving myself, and yeah, so following it, seeing why, and looking at the whole big picture. We always got to zoom out, look at ourselves, but also look at the collective, look at the patterns that we see around us, you know.
Yeah. And it's not even like when I'm settling, like I'm not talking down upon the people that I was with. Like they're good people, right?
Yeah,
And I truly wish them the best, but it's just that like we weren't the right fit,
it's a misalignment. Yeah,
misalignment, man. And wish them the best, right? I hope they find their person, that does have them build a life that is worth living for them.
yeah,
But no, it's really true when it comes to media. Like you think that you'll find a person and then like things will just click and fit. And another example, my life was that, dude, I moved all over the place for like the past 10 years. Like I moved numerous times within the past 10
mhm,
years thinking that like the location will make me feel something that I was
yeah.
searching for, right? Like the
That's the
new
same thing.
location, yeah, man, same thing, right? Same thing, different story, where it's like the new location is going to make me feel better about myself. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And maybe the lifestyle of that location will make me happier, but it's like to be baseline just like content with my life, it's internal, right? You need to look
yeah.
in.
So what were the feelings that you encountered when you got to the place of
Something's
realizing that,
missing.
yeah,
Something's
like,
missing.
hey, this relationship isn't working for me, or this place, I moved to a different city, like this isn't working for me. Like, yeah, how did that play out for you?
Yeah, man, it was just there's still the emptiness, right? Like that still feeling of just something is missing inside of me. And what was it? Self-love, right?
Mhm.
Again, all comes back to self-love, right? Like that's usually just the core thesis of the show, probably, right?
Yeah, yeah,
It's just like, yo, it's easier said than done, y'all. But it's like just if you can love yourself, you know what I mean. That is, you are so far ahead of the you are so far ahead on the path to just becoming a better you, right?
hmm,
And yeah, man, I again realized that probably a year and a half ago. And then, the crazy thing when we met, right? When I found that self-love and I'm still traveling, guess what? I enjoyed those places so much more because
yeah,
I like actually cared about myself and
yeah,
I actually like So while I was still traveling, while I was still doing the thing that I did in the past, but I was rooted in a place where it's like I'm just great, and I'm just, experiencing life and living, man, like really trying to live. And I enjoyed it even more, right? I enjoyed it more, and like, that was just a healthy byproduct of doing the internal work of like really peeling back the layer of my psyche, of my brain, you know what I mean? And like tinkering, right? Like
Yeah.
what needs love, right? Not what's wrong with me, not what's broken, but like what is, what needs more love poured into it? Like what
Yeah.
aspects of myself that just need me to yeah, man, address myself, treat myself like a friend, treat myself like a brother,
Yeah.
that I love.
And then those experiences, the traveling or having a romantic relationship or making new friends, it's all coming from a place of not needing it. It's just coming from a place, it's an extra.
Yes.
You know, it's like the
Yeah.
travel, it's just an extra. And then that's when that sparkle comes into your life where it's like, yeah, this is how it's supposed to be. You know, it's supposed to be fun, it's supposed to be smooth and enjoyable. It's not supposed to be coming along with so much attachment, right? Because if you're going somewhere and like, oh, I'm only really gonna be happy if I have a lot of fun in this new town, if I have some cool experiences, or if I meet some really cool people that like me and think I'm an interesting person. Like if those are conditions that you're placing upon yourself and your enjoyment of life, then that disconnect that's in you that's causing those feelings in the first place, that feeling of needing something is just going to be reflected in your reality. So you're just going to have more unsatisfying experiences where you're going to keep you chasing your tail until you finally come to the place of, I don't like this suffering anymore. Turn inward, find the self-love, and then it's only then and only then at which point you have found it within yourself that then the reality will mirror it back to you, where you'll start to have those more enjoyable experiences, but you'll be having them in a different way because there's not an attachment to them. It's not like, oh my god, thank god I'm having these great experiences. It's just like, oh cool, this is nice. Again, it's extra. It's like, it's not a necessity. It's just a nice little bonus.
Yeah, man. Cherry on top of the sundae, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, bro. And so when it comes to this kind of, rooting back to like the initial comment starting this episode, right? It's like when I came when you have that contentment, right? And that thing, looking into those other avenues, right? Those other vices,
Yeah.
primarily when it comes to porn or masturbating,
Sexuality in general.
sexuality, right?
Yeah.
Sexuality. Those aren't healthy, right? Like those have existed for, I mean, what, nudie mags and the maybe what Playboy in like the 1950s and 60s. Like this is a
Yeah.
relatively new phenomenon that humans have had to deal with, like just like inundated with this much imagery, you
Yeah.
know. And so, a lot of empathy for everybody, right? Like it's just like we're constantly under a barrage of this stuff. And but what I implore to people is that you pour that energy, if you have a partner, into that partner, right? And if you don't have a partner, pour that energy into yourself, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But if you can control that aspect of your mind, where it's just like, fucking the primal,
Hmm.
whatever that is inside our genetic makeup. If you can get a hold of that and pour that into yourself or into your partner, like healthy outlets, it helped me a lot, man. Just to like, number one, my brain isn't consumed by that stuff like 24/7. And if I see it online, I'm like, get out of here. You know what I mean? I'm like, get
Yeah.
out. I don't even want, get out of my feed. You know what I mean? Like, don't even come near me. I'm like, because it's
Yeah.
just no pun intended. um,
Yeah.
but yeah, man. Yeah, what do you any thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, ultimately, I think it's important to recognize, like, just taking that another step is like recognizing that it is an addiction. Like,
Yeah.
when there is, and that comes from a lack, again, I'm just touching on the lack of self love in the first place. There's something that's not feeling good And then the unwise mind tries to seek something in the external to make it feel better, whether it's dating around, settling on partners that aren't really aligned, chasing various, chemical addictions, or something like porn. It's these are all things that are providing big hormone releases, like neurotransmitter releases in the brain. They're like, a dopamine rush in the brain. It gets a hit of a drug. So understanding that the way that we've been conditioned, and to speak specifically for men, the way that we have been conditioned to seek that that big drug release within our own brains, whether it's in flirting, chasing women, talking to them, flirting with them, interacting online, looking at images it's all providing the same thing. And recognizing that this stuff, like, it's only as real as we make it. It's such a big deal because we have believed it's a big deal for so long. We've been programmed for several generations to be objectifying women, and that's the only reason that it's so deeply ingrained. And it's kind of like alcohol. It's totally acceptable in our society, and that's why there's a lot of alcoholics. We
Yeah.
also have a society that has been, like, heavily programmed to focus on sexuality, and that's a big conversation on why. um but we'll focus on just the fact that's the state of affairs, right? And so anyway, understanding that it is an addiction, first and foremost, is really important, because it's not just the way that it is. We can have that conversation where people will argue, oh, it's the most primal drive for human beings, to procreate. And, like, I mean, I personally believe that our most primal drive, our most innate drive, is to be in full awareness of our existence and our connection with ourselves and our creator. And the rest of that and whatever comes after that is secondary. But regardless if it is that primal urge to procreate, it can still be done in a more healthy way. I don't think many people would agree that what's going on is the product of a healthy society. So but yeah, what do you think in terms of, like, seeing it as an addiction?
Yeah, man, I would agree with that. Absolutely. I think when you do something, like every day. I know people that, like when you're a kid and you're like, oh, yeah, like it's like how many times? It's like every day. Like you, every day
Yeah,
is a common response.
yeah, yeah,
From teenagers, from
teenagers. Yeah.
yeah, from young men, right? Like it's a common response that it's like they do
Mhm.
that every day. So if you're doing something every day, if you have a beer every day, are you an alcoholic? If
Right.
you do any other hard drug every day,
Yeah,
do you have a problem? you
yeah.
know?
And then I think about it in terms of how it is a stress response too. Like,
Yeah.
that behavior is has been documented as being very high in, like, in the military, in first responders, like anyone who's going through, and we can reflect on our own experience. Everyone can reflect on their own experience and see, like, well, yeah, when have I craved engaging in that behavior in the past? It's generally when you're wanting in more of a distraction, just like somebody reaching for a beer. Could be like going out to talk to women, or watch porn or whatever. It's like that's usually going to be ramped up when you're more stressed out, which, again, in my opinion, like, supports the position that it is an addiction, because yeah, that it kind of follows that same pattern.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. And I had a friend who advised to me, anytime you get the urge, right? Be like, oh, like I'm gonna go do this thing. He's like, just breathe, dude. Like instead, like just like really just take some deep breaths and like
Yeah.
breathe through that. Like breathe through that. And that helped me, like that was a good like to try to get both my hands on the wheel and get that part of my brain like to take a back seat, right?
Yeah.
And to be in control of that. And that helped me a lot, you know. I'm just you know, if anyone's curious about how to like just slow it down, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Slow down those behaviors or you change those behaviors. Um yeah, man,
yeah,
breath, you know, just breathe through it.
exactly. We can move energy with our breath.
Right.
It's like we have to breathe to be alive. That's our main way that we take in life force energy. And we are, you know, for the just to put it very simply, we're electrical beings. You know, we know that we're like we have an electrical current running through us. We know that we are energetic beings, and if some energy is stuck and localized in one place and causing a disturbance, we have the ability to move it. We don't have to just or we have the ability to move it in many different ways, not
Yeah.
just one, not just releasing it, not just um, releasing it at that second chakra point. We can move it up within our in our beings and use that energy for a higher creative purpose. Again, that sexual energy, being creative energy is like it is, but it can find a higher expression if we harness it. So yeah, bringing it back to just the point around um, that doesn't have to be your normal. That doesn't have to be the case where someone is really a slave to their sexual urges, right? Because that's what I've observed. That's what I observed in myself in my younger years and all of my peers. It's
Yeah.
just it's an absolute it's a real monkey on the back, like it's a real
Yeah.
burden.
It dictates so much of their action. When you see someone eh, who's just succumbed to that part of their brain, all of their actions pretty much, you
Their
know,
entire life.
their entire life is based
Yeah,
around just the next conquest of, again,
yeah,
objectifying a person, right? To go after and to conquer, and not even treating that person like a human being. And for what? Again, for the ego, right? To satisfy that person's perception of themselves.
exactly.
And yeah, man, once you're out of it and you see other people who are like still consumed by it, yeah, it's like watching dogs, you know what I mean? Like, you
It
know, when
is.
it's like
Yeah,
the dog starts humping, you know, another dog, and you're like, Jesus, dude, like, stop doing that,
yeah.
you know?
Yeah, in my experience, it was very similar to quitting drinking, where I was just like, once I was out of it and then hanging around people that were drinking, I was just like, oh my God, I can't
Yeah,
believe I used to engage in that behavior. And it's the same kind of thing. Once you get a hold of your sexual energy, it is like you have so much freedom. It opens up so much. And for me, that was like one of the last things, of several addictions throughout my life. Like the hold that women had over me, that was like and I'm not saying that like I'm not placing blame or something. I'm saying my the way that my own energy was placing a hold on myself, my addiction to women essentially. um that was the toughest one to break because it was so supported by society. It was celebrated by other men. It's like when I used to be dating a couple people at a time when I was living in a polyamorous relationship. It was like all the guys that I used to work with um thought that was like the coolest thing ever. Once they found out about it, it wasn't something that I went um advertising, but it was supported, it was celebrated, and it was like, oh, it was the last thing to look at. It was the last thing that I was really saying, like, this has to change. It was the one that I made excuses for the longest. And once I finally broke that and realized, again, like you're saying, like, come out the other side and go, oh, like that actually doesn't define me as a man. That doesn't define me as a person. This doesn't define my existence. Come out the other side and go, wow, like I am so glad to be out of that. And then, like you said, once you're outside of it, it's so much easier to see how ridiculous it is. And like I said, it defines people's entire lives.
yeah,
Like men will choose their career, their the type of exercise that they do, the type of car that they buy, the places that they live, everything is structured around trying to impress women, and trying to impress women so that they can have mirrored back to them some sort of surface level value, self-worth, something that they can give themselves, the something with which they can use to give themselves the permission slip to say, like, I'm good enough, for to be seen as good enough, by themselves and by their peers, all based on this surface level stuff. Again, the conquests. What kind of attention do I get? How often? And that's all a finite game. And as far as, having been out of it for a long time and being aware of it, not surrounding myself with people like that anymore. Sometimes I forget how stuck people still are. But just recently, as I think I told you a little while ago, like I've been in the gym and overhearing conversations between young men, and I go, wow, it's still like these guys are really just obsessed with this idea that they have to sleep with women. Like that's just the sum total of their existence. And uh, but yeah, as I digress a
Yeah,
little bit,
and it consumes their time. It
yeah,
consumes their thoughts,
all of their
consumes their
energy,
time, all of their energy, man. And it's just
yeah,
like if you could pour that into something, anything else, yeah, creative pursuit, a skill, learning, right?
yeah,
And
just
instead of
yourself,
just
man,
conquest, yeah, into yourself, right? Pouring love in
yeah.
yourself, and yeah, and just like, is that, just to pose the question, is that the start of a healthy relationship? Right, if your pursuit
Yeah.
was was to conquer, somebody
Yeah.
else, for your like, that's not the basis of a good healthy relationship. Like, if the goal is, a long partnership rooted in love, rooted in healthy whatever, just a healthy relationship, is that frame of mind the way you're going to find it? Absolutely not.
No, absolutely not, because it inherent in that approach is objectification, is surface level appreciation. So, for men, that's mostly just going after women that they have decided look good. And
Yes.
that is that, when we're focusing on anything in the finite realm, everything changes here. We
Yeah.
age,
We're all gonna get old.
we get injured, we get sick. Like, these things, that's going to come with suffering at some point. If you have based your understanding of love, your appreciation of another being, based solely on their physical expression. Not to say that it isn't an element, and that we shouldn't be with people that we do have like a physical attraction to. It's not saying that that's wrong, but it's not the only aspect,
Yeah.
right? And that people will settle where they go, oh wow, this person's very good looking. They're abusive and unkind,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
and then they'll settle. And then that's, again, what is that a reflection of? If someone is settling for someone who's abusive, but they're good looking, that's a reflection of how that person feels about themselves. It's the lack of self-love, right? So
Right.
yeah, it's not recommended, but it seems to be the case for many that they need to experience that themselves in order to figure that out. And I think, that's one of the reasons we're having this conversation here, is to try and bring people to that awareness that they don't have to go through that suffering to come to that awareness, to come to that realization. Rather, at this point,
Right.
we can stop putting on these masks and posturing for each other, especially as men, saying this is how it's got to be. And we can stop gatekeeping this information and just be a little bit more open and vulnerable and loving, and sharing what we have experienced, and say, you know what, that's not the way. Like, it might sound cool. You're trying to do these things to impress the boys, to impress the women in your life. Like, it's a losing game. So let's save you some steps
Yeah.
and get
Yeah.
right to the point.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And like you said too, growing up, a friend's mother said something very wise that stuck with me, where she was like, the looks get you there, right? Like, again, physical attraction. We're not blind, right? I'm
Hmm.
half blind. But I'm half blind, but
You're half-sighted.
half-sighted, brother. But yeah, like looks, we're not naive to the fact that like looks don't play a role. But what my friend's mother said growing up was like, yeah, looks might get you there, but they will not keep you there. Right? Like you need to
Yeah.
look below the surface to see if there's compatibility, to see if there's a mutual respect, to see if you got, yeah, you laugh together, there's good communication, right? It's there's so much more to it than just the surface. And again, it has a part to play, but it is not everything when it comes to a relationship, because it's gonna fade. You're gonna get old, right? You might go bald, right?
Mhm.
Your hair might gray. It's just like you're gonna get old too.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and so it's like you better make damn sure that that relationship is rooted in something more than just the physical.
Yeah, because otherwise then, those, as you said, those things will fade and then resentment will build. And then you realize, you know, 20 years down the road, you're sitting there going, wow, if only I had been a little bit more wise and a little bit more emotionally mature, I wouldn't be in this mess. And this
Yeah.
is why I really think this conversation is important, because we, from what I observe, have just been looping for generations, because we've been observing this happen. We've been observing, the generation ahead of us go through a midlife crisis, go through all this, ridiculous, easily avoidable pain, but then we still follow the same playbook that they used. We still we still base our self-love, our importance on the external, on the things that we have acquired, on our bank account, on the number of women we've been with. Like, we can see that it's hilarious, and it's kind of willfully ignorant of us at this point if we don't stop it, because it is so obvious. The way we've been doing things doesn't work. It doesn't lead to happiness. Our baseline happiness can be so much higher if we just apply our conscious will to looking at ourselves and being vulnerable, and letting go of these things that might be popular, but popular within a framework that is sick, that is,
Yeah.
a profoundly sick society.
Yeah. Yeah, man. No, I know. So it's, what I, yeah, the state of things is crazy to me. And honestly is, and it's like what happened? Like the romantic in me is like, what happened to romance? Like, you know what I mean? And
Mhm.
like courtship. But yeah, it's been under attack for sure, for like you said, for generations. And if everything's rooted in self love, right? If the like you said, the thesis of this show is self love. Man, fight for it. Fight for it.
Yeah. And yeah, even surrender for it, right?
So
Like,
yeah,
just we're because as far as I see it, we've been swimming upstream the whole time. Like,
yeah,
it's this idea that it's outside of us, and that we have to reach for it and we have to struggle and fight, is really actually the opposite of how life works. When we are trusting enough, when we are willing to be vulnerable enough to sit back and release these mechanisms of control that have been, um sorry, I don't want to go too much there. When we stop trying to control things so much, especially as men, and we just kind of relax and surrender, we can look and see that things actually do flow a little bit more easily. We do meet the right people. Life has a funny way of delivering us exactly what we need, and the more we begin to trust it, the more it becomes a positive feedback loop in which the magic just continues to increase, and that baseline happiness gets so much higher.
yeah. You're right. You're right. Not fight. Yeah, because Yeah, yeah. When you fight it, well, yeah, fighting is just not the you know, in many respects, right? You know what I mean? Fighting is not the answer, right? So you're right.
No.
Yes, surrender to the flow. You know, jellyfish, man. Go, you know, go on the flow.
Yeah, yeah, it's funny we've got such a fighting consciousness, such a warring consciousness, you know. We're
Yeah,
pretty we're pretty intelligent, we're a pretty intelligent species, yet at the same time we've got some of our best and brightest, you know, smashing their fists into each other and or crashing into each other on a field chasing an inflated ball, you know.
yeah.
It's an interesting situation.
I know, dude. Yeah, that's another crazy thing. And sports are fun, right? We both grew up as athletes, but it's just like, man, do I not care anymore about like just professional sports, dude. It's just like, again, like they're fun, right? Like they are fun. And it, like, I'm a competitive person as well. Like, I get it. I get it. But it's just like, I'm just like, it doesn't matter. Like, you
No.
know, like it doesn't matter on the broader scheme of things. Like it is a game, right? And I love the athletes that call it out where they're just like, man, it's just basketball, right? Like, you know, man, it's just football. We're very lucky to do the things we do. And I'm like, I love those athletes that kind of like, you know, have that self-awareness to call it out. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, that was a crazy another byproduct of this journey of me where it's just like, you know, like, yeah, I grew up in Boston, was a big Patriots fans for football. And like, I remember, yeah, you know, like loving Tom Brady and, you know, like all this stuff growing up. And it's just like, dude, I could care less. I don't even know names of players anymore. Like I really,
Mhm.
you know, like, it's just a weird byproduct of just not caring. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, which again is just it's just like pulling our attention away from being obsessed with women. There's a lot of freedom that lies on the other side of that,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is an
Oh, and people
incredible.
like, yeah, yeah, if the team loses and then it's like, you know, you're pissed in your family home for the rest of the day and you know, it's just like,
Yeah.
man, like to let something that is completely out of your control dictate the energy of your family, of your kids is wild to me. Like, okay,
Yeah.
like be a fan, like fair. Like I'm not against that necessarily, but it's like if you're gonna let the loss of your team dictate the energy in your home, like that's crazy to me, dude.
Yeah.
Like what are you doing? Like don't like go smashing, you know, like, you know, stuff around the house or being pissed off or you know, and then like kids are like, you know, hiding in their rooms because oh dad's mad the team lost, you know.
Yeah. And this all comes down to self-love as well, because it's like at what point was the um at what point did we start defining ourselves based on the way a group of guys that have been signed to play for a team that just happens to be from the town that we're from? Like, at what point did we decide that we're going to let that define our happiness? And
Yeah.
uh, it's you know, there's got to be something lacking within that person, whoever is that dedicated, that attached, I should say, that attached to the outcome of a game of people kicking around an inflated ball, right? Like just look at it for what it is, then there's something lacking within that person. There's a disconnect. There's a lack of love. There's nothing wrong with enjoying watching people do something where they've reached a level of mastery. There's nothing wrong with enjoying that. So yeah, it's impressive to watch any sport really. Like we can get into it, but you know, people identify with a certain sport and a certain team, and it's like, why? Well, it's just because that's what happens where I'm from, and that's what I grew up with. It's like, okay, so just look at. We can always follow the trail back and just be like, so it's not real. If you grew up in, you know, like you grew up with American football because you're from Boston. Well, if you were from Bogota, Colombia, you would be interested in a different kind of football.
Right.
And like
Yeah,
what it
no, dude.
doesn't
I
matter.
was when I was in Uruguay, the only thing I could equate football, right, like, you know, in America soccer to was it was a religion, man. You
Yeah,
know? Like those people it was ride or die for their teams. I think
yeah,
it was like Peñarol in Uruguay. Like it was like that was their team, dude. And yeah, yeah, religion. Like
yeah,
fanatical for their teams.
yeah.
Fanatical. I've never seen anything like it. It was crazy.
And they'll speak about it with pride, you know, and defend those positions with violence. Like I think it was in Colombia.
Yeah. Yeah, goalies
20.
were shot or something. Yeah, he
Yeah,
like
there
you
was
know go,
yeah, there was a guy who scored on his own goal by accident at one point, and he
yep,
was murdered.
yep,
And everyone knows the soccer, like the soccer hooligans in the UK and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, at what point do we scratch our heads, sit, causing violence to another human being over
yeah,
something that's not real?
yeah.
By no stretch of the imagination could anyone consider this actually real if we sit and we have a conversation and we look at this closely. This is not real.
It's not real. Not to mention when you tie your finances to the outcomes again of something that's not in your control.
Boy, gambling,
When you
yeah.
gamble, and we have DraftKings and all this stuff that's everywhere, and you're putting your hard-earned money, into something for that you don't have control over, right? You're
Hmm.
just, it's insane to me. It's insane to me when people do it. And again, it's an addiction, and I have a lot of empathy for addictions, but it was the same thing growing up, like watching my father buy scratch tickets. I'm like, you could just go light that on fire in the driveway. It's the same result,
Yeah,
but go light that money on fire. Like, it's
yeah,
just like, that's what, like, we need that money, like, what are you
yeah,
doing? And
yeah.
if you have kids and they see, like, we're watching, like, kids are always watching, they're watching the patterns of behavior. And if you're doing the same thing and upset about a game, it's just like, again, like, yeah, man, it doesn't make sense to me as well. But again, a lot of empathy if you have, my grandfather, the Vietnam War vet. Guess where he worked
Mm,
for many years was casinos in Mississippi.
mm,
And so, like, I've seen it. The man was a millionaire. Adam lost it all. You know what I mean? Just because
really?
this crazy lifestyle. Yeah, the gambling, dude. Like, it's
Wow.
just like, like, it's just, there's these crazy highs and these down. Died
Yep.
without much to his name, right? Died without a lot. Um, it's crazy, man. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I don't understand it. And again, it's just like addiction, right? It's similar to the porn thing, or it's just putting your time and energy into these things that I think you're better without.
Yeah, it's an important thing to recognize that, like, have that realization and then allow that to be the signpost that directs you inward to find, like, where's that dysregulation, because any of these big gambling, porn, whatever it is, fighting, even these things are all a reflection, like needing those behaviors to feel a spike in some sort of neurotransmitter, uh to release hormones, whatever it is that's coming as a result of an imbalance in the first place, right? Becoming there's which is dysregulation. So realizing that at the heart of all of this is something that is off within ourselves, which coming but we're talking about it from like the biological perspective there, but then realizing that it all comes down to the way that we influence our inner world through our beliefs and our knowing in the nature of our reality, which again is like coming back to self-love. If we have a lack of self-love, that's going to be reflected in our biology. That's going to be reflected in the way that in the way that we move through the world, and it's going to cause the need for those, or the perceived need for those spikes, right? Those that journey through the peaks and valleys of addiction.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, man. I think that's the good place to cap it. And so, again, thesis of the show, y'all, if you were just starting on this path of self-love, right? One step in front of the other. Because it is the entire basis for building a life where, like, you feel good, right? Like, about yourself, about where you're at in life, about what's important. um Really just try to make a concerted effort to be rooted in love, and it's easier said than done, right? So are the best things in life, right? There, but it takes work, right? But if you can, and we're still working at it too, like, we're
Of
still
course.
trying to walk that path, but the further along you walk it, it gets a little bit easier, a little more complicated, a little harder in some ways too, to keep peeling back the layers that you don't even know were there, right? Or you think you have a grasp on it, and then it's like, that's in itself, not to say, um the journey isn't linear, is what I'm trying to say, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, if you like what you heard today, if you are hopefully got something out of it for oneself, support us in the ways that are free. Follow us on Spotify or Apple or wherever you listen to podcasts. Write a review. Engage with us too. Like we're listening to you, and so if there's something you want to talk about, or if there's a rebuttal to any of this stuff, we're happy to bring it up in the next episode and keep things moving. So yeah, Adam, any closing thoughts before we wrap up episode 5 of Oneself?
Yeah, just to add, to what you're saying, when we focus that energy inward, it like you said, the self-love journey is not necessarily easy, but once we apply our energy in that direction, the return is always so much greater. And like you said, it's not always linear. Sometimes it feels like we've taken one step forward and a couple steps back, but that's never actually the case. That's always a judgment from the ego. In truth, we are always growing, and the motivation will grow. Once you see the result of focusing some of your energy toward bettering yourself, and whatever that means for you, because that's a personal journey, it it absolutely is worth it, and that will become apparent, and you'll find that motivation to keep going. So I would, yeah, just encourage anyone who's starting to think about it to continue thinking about it and continue looking at it.
Awesome. We'll see you next time, y'all.
Right on. Take care.